It's 1 2 1 2. Yeah,
So, good morning and welcome. Welcome to Brighton Unitarian Church. You are particularly welcome if you have turned your mobile phone off. Thank you. Now, could I ask you to stand? Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. So, a very warm welcome to all. Some of you have travelled from the Shetland Islands to be here, and some have travelled from New Zealand to be here. But we welcome all those, and we welcome those who are joining us online from around the world. And we particularly like to acknowledge the absence of those family members who are joining us online, but in New Zealand, that they couldn't be here. So welcome everyone to this celebration of Grace Bindell. Brighton Unitarian Church has been Grace's spiritual home for over 25 years, and she is dearly loved by us all here. You may have noticed from your service order that the celebrant today is one Francis Tolley. I am not Fanny. Unfortunately, my name is Stephen, not unfortunately, but my name is Stephen. Fanny unfortunately contracted COVID this week, so she was unable to lead this service. So I have the honour of being able to step in and do that for her. So I will be supporting Grace's family today. So before we begin, I'd like to raise a couple of housekeeping points. One, for those of you who are not familiar with the building, the toilets are through these white doors, the ladies straight on, the gents to the right. I've been asked to extend a warm welcome to everyone here to both the internment up at Bear Road at the cemetery and to Wook's home for the wake afterwards. There are details of the address on the back of your service order, but also at the back of the church, on the table on the way out, there are maps of how to find Wook's. Also, because there's another event taking place in the church immediately after the service, I've been asked to request that you make your way out of the church and clear of the steps straight away after Grace has been carried out to the Arca vehicle, which is parked outside. Thank you. Grace was a remarkable woman, and she led a remarkable life, full of exploration, educationally, professionally, spiritually, politically, and geographically. She experienced it all: love, friendship, and loss. She lived way beyond the lifespan she had expected. She was always telling us. And now, although we feel this great sense of loss, there is also a sense of completeness to her life. The time we have here together today in this sacred space is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on, celebrate, and remember Grace. This is a moment of pausing, a moment of significance for all of us gathered here as she moves into the next phase of the cycle of life and death. We stand with her as witnesses to this cycle, and we acknowledge the honor of doing so. Grace's presence in our lives has made a difference to us all, especially to Andy, Wook, and their families, but for all of us, it has made a difference. So we take time now to pause, to come into the present and to breathe and to recognize that our senses are more than just us, that they are attuned to something wider, to an unfolding process beyond words. We listen to the silence, the words, the music, to that which is sacred to us, to each of us, whatever that may be. And so, as is our Unitarian custom, I'd like to invite Rosa to come up to light the chalice. We light this chalice as a symbol of the spark of life which infuses all creation. We recognize the life force, the connectedness, and we give thanks for the wholeness and the completeness of it all. Into the quiet stillness of this place, we have come from many places and with many thoughts. We gather in the presence of the sacred, which will have a different meaning for each of us. In this safe place, so familiar to Grace, we will spend time remembering her today. We ask for strength and support, especially for Wook and Rosa and Andy and Anna and their children, Sam, Tasman, Oscar, Ruby, and Celeste, and for all of us here who love and care for Grace. We ask that we be held gently in loving kindness. Dying is a sacred passage. None of us knows the whole truth about what lies beyond death. Each of us will have our own theories in relation to that mystery. What we do know at this moment is that the life of this one whom we have loved lives on in us in multitudes of ways. And so for a few moments, let us pause together in stillness and each, in our own way, acknowledge that truth. Thank you, Rosa.
This is a poem that Grandma wrote called Death, the Last Great Journey. This last one, though, how to? How to what? Get ready? Well, yes, be prepared, my dear. One way or another, you've done nothing else all your life. Didn't you know? Anyway, since you ask now about this, acknowledge its existence consciously. Then look at it carefully. What does it look like? Dark, looming, threatening? Or is there a gentleness, an enigmatic smile? Certainly a magic hovers around, since you will see what your whole chosen lifestyle has led you to see. What you have already embraced and struggled and laughed with, what you have already elected to see will turn out to be how it is. The reflected image of life. It is the last act of living, after all, and thus will be dealt with in character. So treat it as a friend, smile at it, tease it, trust it, but do not be afraid to acknowledge its strangeness, for to the living it remains incomprehensible. It is the beckoning finger of mystery, the enigma of our cloistered comprehension, the dilemma between eternity or the eternal now. It is the yang which gives meaning to the yin, whispering. All that you are and all that you have been, that life force which is you, can evolve, yes, but cannot dissipate. You remain, forever a part of the whole, the one, the continuing journey.
Hello, everyone. So amazing to see so many people here. My name's Andy. This is Wook, and this is Francis, who is a dear friend of Grace. We are going to summarise Grace's 103 years of life in 10 minutes. So please excuse our brevity. Grace's father, Harold, was an explorer, traveller and lecturer. Her mother died from TB when Grace was 3 years old. Grace remembered being taken into a room to say goodbye. She wasn't allowed to kiss her mother's face, so she kissed her finger. Harold was able to provide for his children's education, but not at home. And from the age of 6, Grace and Eric, her younger brother, went to a number of different boarding schools and spent the holidays with various relatives, some kindly and some terrifying. Sometimes in a country estate with tennis courts and horses, and at other times in the attic of a boarding house. The highlight of their life was when their father turned up, when their lives would be transformed into adventures as Red Indians and Eskimos in the woods. Grace left school at 16, and she got a job at Bernardo Home for Girls, where she was house mother to a dozen tough 15-year-old orphans. After that, she worked at St. Columba's Home for the Dying, and then in 1941, started training as a nurse at the Middlesex Hospital, where she worked throughout the war, including through the Blitz and during the influx of the wounded from the D-Day landings. From the age of 13, she began her lifelong spiritual journey, initially as a saved evangelical zealot. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? This ever-broadening inquiry led her through Anglicanism, Catholicism, the Quakers, creation-centered spirituality, and eventually here to the Unitarian Church, where I think she's been for 24 years. So thank you for being her friends and community. After the war, Grace's independent and adventurous spirit led her to take nursing jobs, firstly in Iran, which was then Persia, and then in Bordeaux, where she first encountered a challenge to her sense of British correctness and started her lifelong love and respect of other cultures and ways of living. In 1949, she took a job as a private nurse caring for the premature twins of the British consul in Bordeaux and moved with them to Singapore in 1951. Later that year, she joined the Malaysian Red Cross. Grace was posted up country, where with her trusty Land Rover, she single-handedly ran clinics in the jungle villages. This was during the communist insurgency. The Red Cross was considered neutral, so Grace often crossed the front lines and treated all equally. In 1955, she met and married Duncan Hamilton, my dad, in Singapore. Duncan's success and self-assurance attracted Grace, and Grace's independent spirit and unorthodoxy attracted Duncan. But ultimately, their differences were too great, and they separated 15 years later. In 1956, Duncan was recruited to set up a Nigerian-run insurance company, and they moved to Lagos. The racism that Grace encountered in Lagos appalled her, and she shunned the colonial social set. Instead, she worked to set up the Nigerian Red Cross and worked helping lepers and beggars on Lagos streets. For this, she was labelled a traitor to her race by her colonial contemporaries. Her first child, Andrew, me, was born in 1956, followed by Jenny in 1957. The family moved back to the UK in 1962 and lived near Wrexham in North Wales. Grace concentrated on being a mum and tried to be a housewife. However, yeah, it's hard to imagine as well, isn't it? However, my main memory was bugger the washing up, let's go fossil hunting in the Welsh mountains. And then along came Over to Wook.
So I'm going to tell the next bit of my mum's life. So yes, I came along when they moved back to Wales, and I spent my early years in a cottage called Primrose Cottage with Pluto the dog, living in a rural setting next to a farm. At that point, Grace joined the Quakers. She kind of discovered the Quakers and used to attend Wrexham meeting. It became an important part of her identity. She also started to retrain as a teacher at that point at Cartrefli College. I think as a way of kind of finding a kind of next step and possibly way out of the marriage. Andy and Jenny at that point were at Quaker boarding school in Yorkshire. And one day when I was 7, my mother and me bundled into a car and we left the house and ended up south and went to stay with my uncle, Uncle Eric, Sue's father, where we stayed for a few months while she completed her teacher's training. Once she was qualified, she set about kind of finding a new home. And I don't recall which came first, the job or the home, but she ended up getting a very cheap, not much money, a cheap house in Wing. And the reason she got such a cheap little house in Wing was because at that point there was plans to build the third London airport there. And there were signs saying wings off Wing. So property prices were rock bottom. She took the chance and we moved to a small house in Wing. At that time, she was teaching then in Dunstable as a history teacher. And I think at some point she sort of jumped to being a maths teacher. She also, to make some extra money, she put an ad in the paper saying something like handy man.
Handy mum.
Yeah. Hang on. I'm telling this bit, Andy. Handy man, question mark, how about handy mum? So we would head off in the evenings on her Honda 50 motorbike with a very fashionable brim on it and go and put up shelves for poor old ladies who didn't know any better. So we used to go to Quaker camps in the summer, and at one of these Quaker camps she met Walter Blindle, which is where she got her this surname she's now currently been using. And she married Walter and moved to Harpenden. I'll skip through that bit. There's not a lot of eventful. She was teaching at the time. Actually, one of the things that happened then, she met her dear friend Matthew at school, and they used to go off together to Swiss Cottage Market. They're selling bric-a-brac in her Morris Traveller. That's some of my memories of that period. Then she left Walter. I'd left home, and she went sort of for a short period of time to live in Luton, which is the sort of cheaper up the road town. She then went off to Gaza with the Quakers and worked there for a few years, mostly teaching English to kind of Palestinian refugees and young women. And as I know many of you know, that was the kind of start of really her kind of passion, and having seen the plight of the Palestinian people, she's campaigned for their freedom ever since. And I'm pleased to let you know that she never knew what happened in the last year. So she came back from the UK, to the UK, and soon after that she went out to California, where she went and studied under Matthew Fox in a institute called Creation Spirituality. It doesn't sound like it's a kind of, it doesn't sound, it's not creationism is what I'm trying to say. Don't be worried, don't be too worried. And she kind of, from there on, she kind of embraced a philosophy of green spirit. When she returned back to the UK, she then moved up to North Wales again and had a lovely cottage there. She ran a vegetarian bed and breakfast for some years. She then moved back down south into Little Grove community, and there are a couple of people here today from that community. It's an intentional community near Chesham, where I used to visit a lot. And then when I became pregnant with Rosa, she moved down to Brighton to help me with Rosa and to be the most fabulous grandmother you could ever wish for.
In 1997, my friend Zoe and I re-established a branch of Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Brighton. Zoe heard of a woman just arrived in Brighton who had previously worked in Gaza. We arranged to meet this Grace Blindell, and in no time, she was our long-serving treasurer. I particularly remember her in her mid-80s, taking fares, as it were, like a bus conductor, down the aisle of a coach on our way to a demo in London. She was then, I think, 85. She was still protesting weekly at the clock tower in her late 90s. Grace wasn't someone to pull her punches when writing to politicians. Quote, "Dear Tony Blair, the current explosion of violence involving Israel, Lebanon, and the Gaza Strip, and your flaccid and mealy-mouthed pronouncements, feebly echoing the equally biased views of G.W. Bush, have sickened me." End quote. In 2004, Grace joined this church. I think she must have been coming before that, because we heard 25 years. I guess she actually became a member in 2004. And in 2008, recommended it as a suitable place for Christine and me to get married. When the arrangements for this went awry, she stepped into the breach and conducted the ceremony herself. She'd never done it before and never did it afterwards. We very soon became active members, and in this way we came to know Wook and Rosa. At a writing group I ran, Grace read her fascinating autobiographical sketches. Another member of that group, Ben Mullins, who's sitting here, reminds me that he and Grace collaborated on cryptic crosswords, a great passion of theirs. In 2010, Grace contributed chapter 1 to Satish Kumar's Green Spirit, Path to a New Consciousness. She concluded, I quote, "Everything spiritual and material is a part of the whole." For her, the Palestinians were also a rightful part of the whole, rather than, at best, an inconvenience. In 2016, Eric, who had become a well-known structural engineer, was ailing. So off she went to Hampshire to help care for him. Fearing, that is, she might not reach her 100th, This church celebrated her 99th birthday here, which was fortunate, for lockdowns were upon us within a month, and her 100th surprise celebration had to take place in a car park. No sooner had poetry meetings resumed at the Cornerstone Community Centre than Grace was back there. On her 101st birthday, that's where Christine and I picked her up for a celebratory meal. We offered to accompany her home on the bus, but she resolutely refused. In 2022, Grace's elder daughter, I've got that, yes, her elder daughter, Jenny, sorry, getting confused, died. She died then, and I visited Grace shortly after. Poor Jenny, she kept repeating. It must have felt the wrong way round. Our last visit to Grace was 2 days before she died. She could no longer speak, but she smiled at us and stroked our hands. Grace's life touched so many, our own providentially included.
I wrote this song for Grandma when I was 17, and when I played it for her, then she said, "Will you play it for me at my funeral?" So here we are. It's called Galapagos Tortoise, because I think she looks like one. Little round eyes and glasses that frame the beautiful spirit that leaps from your skin, my Galapagos tortoise. The lines on your face that hold so many years of laughter and beauty and also tears, my Galapagos tortoise. 103 years of walking on this earth means that you almost learned all there is to learn. Galapagos tortoise. Galapagos tortoise. You stand so bold. Your strides on this earth whisper your words of beliefs and knowledge and passion for the crossword, my Galapagos tortoise. Small or short could be your middle name, but your fierce attitude keeps you from being lame, my Galapagos tortoise. My Galapagos tortoise. 103 years of walking on this earth means that you almost learned all there is to learn. Galapagos tortoise. Galapagos tortoise. You stand so bold. But life has so many stories, and yet you write more. Of little girl and her friends, you are never at war. my Galapagos tortoise. When the day comes that my life does not involve you, all of your inspirational words will stay with me like a tattoo. My Galapagos tortoise, my Galapagos tortoise. 103 years of walking on this earth means that you almost learn all there is to learn. Galapagos tortoise, Galapagos tortoise, you stand so bold, you stand so bold.
Right. So, thank you, Rosa. It's lovely. I want to say a few words, and couldn't really decide what to say, but I think what I want to talk about is her last few years, which have been so precious. So she did start to withdraw from things a few years ago. Up until a few years ago, she was, as many of you will know, she was getting on the bus. She was going out to have lunch, various places on the bus on her own. And she'd get up every morning and she'd get the Guardian from the local shop, say shokran to the shopkeeper, and she would be doing the crossword. She'd also have her weekly visits to Poetry for Pleasure, and it's lovely to see some people there from there here today, which was her kind of absolutely kind of light of her life, really. She absolutely loved it. She'd be getting poems to read, and sometimes she'd read her own, but it was a really important part of those last few years. So about a year and a half ago, really, she kind of took to her bed. She was very tired. I'm very tired. And she really stayed in bed pretty much for the last year and a half, with a few kind of incursions that she'd just suddenly get up and go out on the bus. I'd have to call the police, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, sometimes she had some UTIs during the last few months, which sent her slightly bonkers, which was fairly stressful for me and for Rosa, and had to come and kind of camp out at her house to stop her going doing crazy things. But it was also had its hilarious moments as well. She tried to sort of dress up and go out, and also came some kind of lucidity amidst the kind of madness. I know I'm not making sense, but I don't think it matters too much. But the thing I want to say, is those last couple of years, she was absolutely lovely, when she wasn't telling people to piss off, including us sometimes, But when she wasn't doing that, she softened, and she was very, very loving. And I feel, amidst all the things I'm feeling, I keep getting these leaps of joy of like, we did it. She stayed at home. She was conscious until really close to the end. And I want to say a really special thanks to Pat, who's sitting there. Wave, Pat. Pat is her neighbour and been a good friend. And we couldn't have done it without you, Pat. Pat has shown such kindness to Grace. and been part of some hilarious moments as well, you know, where she'd phone me up in the middle of the night and I'd go around and Grace had drunk a bit too much Merlot and couldn't get off the floor. had to limit it then and put it in small doses. So there are a few of that. We may talk about them later. Certainly Pat and I will be giggling about them for years to come, I'm sure. So in that time, she would be in bed and kind of, I had carers popping in the day just to make sure there's food out as well. And she'd get up and would come back in and she'd got a glass of wine by her bed and a big pile of chocolate biscuits. But she would say to me frequently, she would say, I know I'm at the end of my life. And I feel so grateful for having had such a lucky, I've been so lucky, she would say. I've lived a wonderful life. And she said a few times, she said, and I've done some good things. So she was really kind of really reflecting on that. It was lovely. And she said, thank you to me almost every time, like I said, except when she was telling me to piss off. She said thank you to me for what I'm doing for her. And she said thank you to Rosa. And I just feel so grateful to have had her as a mother, and you know, not only for her crazy quirkiness and the stuff you've heard about, but for that tenderness that she showed me towards the end. It's just, you know, she wasn't so good at showing that side of herself in her life, but in those last few years, she was so tender and loving. And she said to me once, at the end of a kind of UTI episode, when some of the craziness had died down, but she had this lucidity, and she held me and she said, I love you, and she said, and I know now that love will go on forever. So, one more thing I wanted to say was just to say that, you know, Francis told you that he visited and she held his hand a few days before, which is so lovely. And I had Andy from New Zealand on the video call with her in bed. It was a couple of days before she died. And she went to him. I really don't think I could have wished it to be another way. And I'm so happy for Mum that it happened that way. And it's so lovely that there's so many people here. I'm a bit overwhelmed. I think that's it from me.
Hi everyone. Sorry that brought a few tears to my eyes. To me, I'm Anna, Andy's wife, Grace's daughter-in-law from New Zealand. It's brought such joy to know that was her experience in the last few years, and feel quite envious, I suppose, for Andy that wasn't part of his experience because he was so far away. Anyway, I felt called to sing a Maori, New Zealand Maori hymn, which is known as a waiata, to honour Grace's love of New Zealand and also her 5 grandchildren, 4 who live in New Zealand, but 1 lives in the States. But hope I can get through it. And it translates as love, hope, faith for all of us. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi Marie, tato tato e. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi Marie, tato tato e. Me te rangi Marie, tato tato e. Thank you.
Thanks. I was going to say something and I've completely forgotten. Honestly, I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. I've been so moved. Just to let you know, Grace was an incredible mother. An incredible mother. She wasn't a very cuddly mother, not having a mother herself, but she was like a lion behind me, quite a small lion. That's how I felt about her, you know. I'm going to sing a song. So I was actually in Portland visiting my new grandchild when Wook called me. It was in the morning, told me that Grace had gone. It was my birthday. And I've actually felt that it was a gift from Grace, because I think that's how she would have felt about dying. She was tired of living. She'd done it. And she was ready, and she was not afraid of death at all. Not one little bit. It would have been a gift. That's how she would have seen it, I'm sure. So thank you for that, Mum. It's the only gift I got on my birthday, actually. So anyway, I write songs, so that's what I did that morning. I wrote a song thinking I'd like to write a song about Grace. And the melody came quite quickly, but I couldn't find the words. I just couldn't find any words that were suitable. And then I said, well, hang on, Grace, you're a poet. You write the words. And I immediately started writing. And it became apparent after the first line that it was a song from Grace to her own mother. And you know, that's a thread that I've been aware of through Grace's life, that she didn't have a mother, or she had a mother for a very short time. And occasionally that vulnerability would come through, very occasionally. She's pretty fierce most of the time and pretty strong, but she had that side of her as well. So I think this is a song written by me and my mum. Lift me up. I am the cordless child. Lift me high, where the wind is warm and wild. Raise me up to the place where I can see your sweet hand reaching down to me. And if I seem a little restless, I've been waiting for 100 years to see your face and raise my hand to
to wipe away my tears, wipe away my tears. And if I seem a little restless, I've been waiting for 100 years to see your face and raise my hand to wipe away your tears, wipe away my tears.
Lays eggs inside a paper bag. The reason you've seen no doubt is to strip the lightning out. But what these unobservant birds have failed to notice is that herds of white bears will come with buns, steal the bags to hide the crumbs.
So we're going to watch some photos from Mum's life now, and play a song which Mum wrote it down in black and white. They had to play this at her funeral, so she particularly loved hearing me play "Summertime" on the clarinet. So I'm going to play that while we listen to watch some photos.
There's always that thing at funerals, is you learn so much about the person who's gone and you wish that you knew it before. So as our time together in this space draws to a close, we come to a time of prayer, of prayers of thanks for Grace's life. Great mystery within which we live and die, we give thanks for the gift of love, and in particular for the love that brought us here today, for it was love that drew us to this place. We give thanks for Grace's life and all she means to us. Grace touched many lives, many of whom are here today, and she will have touched countless others that we may never hear about. We give thanks for the love and the inspiring life Grace shared with her children, Jenny, Wook and Andy, and their children, Rosa, Sam, Tasman, Oscar, Ruby and Celeste. Grace showed us how to embrace old age with imagination and dignity. She lived an exemplary life of conscience, integrity and respect, adhering to her principles in breaking free from conformity and standing up for what she considered to be right. In Grace, we have known a great woman. It has been a privilege to have been part of her life. Thank you, Grace. And now, as we conclude our service, could I ask that you stand as Grace is carried out of the church and that you follow out straight away, please. Thank you.